This is Bloomberg Businessweek. Insight from the reporters and editors who bring you America's most trusted business magazine, plus global business, finance, and tech news. The Bloomberg Businessweek podcast with Carol Massar and Tim Stenovec from Bloomberg Radio.
One story that has definitely continued to evolve this week, including on this Friday, is the strike by UAW workers out in Detroit. Today, an update, we've got GM and Stellantis, which owns Chrysler, facing some walkouts at a lot more facilities as talks with their workers union failed to make headway, while Ford was spared the escalation after making progress in its negotiations. I'm checking my headlines to make sure I haven't missed anything. Let's get to it, and let's get the latest, because she is front and center on all of this. Bloomberg News auto reporter Gabby Coppola on the phone in Detroit. Diana Lee, also with us, co-founder and CEO at Constellation. She's here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker studio. Her company is a marketing platform for the automotive industry, so they help dealerships reach out to customers. It's a SaaS company. We'll get into it in just a moment. First up, though, Gabby, I do want to get to you. I can't imagine what your life is like and how long your days are. But tell us what's the latest on the strike out there in Detroit, and give us some color of what it's like on the ground.
Yeah, well, I think you did a pretty good summary, Carol. Today, earlier this morning, around 10 o'clock this morning, UAW President Shawn Fain said that he would expand the strike to the parts distribution plants of GM and Stellantis. So that's 38 different facilities across the country. And what we're talking about here is, basically the aftermarket parts, whatever you need to fix your car, Stellantis has a network of 10 Mopar parts facilities across the country. Those people are now walking out on strike. So while the first week was targeted at just some three key products, the Ford Bronco, the Jeep Wrangler, the Chevy Colorado, those are profitable, very appealing products, but they are not, that is not like putting a stake in the heart. If you really want to hurt the automakers, you go after the pickup trucks, the F-150, the Ram 1500, the Chevy Silverado, and the UAW has not gone there. So while the first time was like, we're going to hurt you a little bit, but it's not, and that's why I thought you saw Wall Street not like losing their mind over this, because it's okay, the trucks are okay. But now they're going for things that will affect the automakers' relationship with their customers that, one, former Stellantis or Chrysler executive put it to me today. The plants, when they strike the plants, that affects future customers. If you want to go buy a car, that car may not be available, and if this drags on longer. But with the parts thing, you are affecting existing customers because they won't be able to get the things they want, to make their car run. They need to make the car go.
Well, so let's get to you, Diana, because you deal with the dealerships. That's your customer base who deal with the customers. So how are you viewing this, and what are you hearing from those dealerships, and what's kind of top of mind as you see this strike play out?
Yes. So thank you, Carol and Gabby. And Gabby, really well said. My biggest concern is we're not really talking about how it's affecting consumers right now. So
is it really affecting consumers yet, though?
Not yet, but very soon it will be, because now we're talking over 5,000 employees walking out on Stellantis and General Motors parts distribution centers. So what does that basically mean? Anybody that needs OEM parts for Stellantis or driving a General Motors vehicle that will go to a car dealership to get a repair is now in jeopardy of not being able to have that repair. So right now, the biggest issues that I'm seeing right now is if you can actually have an accident or your car breaks down and you need an OEM part and you make a service department scheduling or appointment, you show up and now you have to actually wait for the car to get repaired. If the repair can't be done because there are no parts, then basically you may have to get a rental car. But that rental car is also affected because obviously if they're renting Stellantis or General Motors vehicles, they will not be able to repair those vehicles as well. So the other part that I think we're also not talking about is technicians. You don't need technicians or even parts people within a dealership if you can't get the OEM parts into the vehicle.
So the longer it goes on, they could potentially either be letting some of those go or something's going to maybe break.
Exactly. And also for dealerships, the profitability is usually in service and parts, right? 100% of their absorption rate is usually covered by the service department. So it will affect parts and service profitability, dealership profitability. They may shut down the service and parts center because they can't actually employ people if the parts aren't there.
Well, this just gets to duration, right? All of these things that we're concerned about, whether or not we get to a soft landing or the Fed gets to its soft landing, is the duration of like the UAW strike, for example.
Right, and what that could mean for the economy and how the growth projections for the fourth quarter could be impacted by that. Gabby, I wanted to bring you back in this conversation. Why is it that when we're looking at GM and Stellantis, those facing more walkouts, whereas when it comes to Ford, why is that being spared more so?
Yeah, well, because Ford gave the union a lot of the key things they were asking for. They've agreed to them. And it's important to keep in mind, Ford historically has had warmer relations with the UAW than GM or Stellantis. They already say that they spend about $1 billion a year more than GM or Stellantis on labor. And part of that is because they have fewer temporary workers. So that is so in a way, the temporary workers, there's a big difference in pay between if you're a temp worker, you don't get profit sharing, you start out at around $15.78 or $16 an hour, and you top out around $20. But if you're a full-time worker, you start, I believe, around $18, and the top wage is $32. So there's a big difference in cost there. And Ford is already paying those people. They have more, they have more workers in the United States than GM or Stellantis. So so in a way, it's less painful for them. This would be making Ford and Stellantis raise their costs, in tandem to match what Ford has already been doing. So it actually would help Ford. But also Ford said, they're going to give temps profit sharing after 90 days. They agreed to COLA, which is the cost of living allowance, which was something that the union gave up in 2009, and the workers on the line are very, determined to get that back. And if I could just say, Carol, I think you asked me, what's it like on the picket line? So this week I drove down, about 45 minutes to Toledo, Ohio, to go visit the people picketing outside the Jeep Wrangler assembly plant. And, one of the things I was struck by was absolutely people feel the pinch on inflation, and so even if it's, you could argue, well, you got more money in profit sharing than you did from if we had given you inflation protection. It doesn't matter. People want things that are guaranteed. They don't like leaving things to the whims of the market. That's how they feel. They want security.
I totally get it. Diana, I want to ask you, though, the model is changing. Elon Musk showed us that. Does the industry and workers have to continue to acknowledge that? And that means some jobs will not be needed because, if once again you strangle the companies with higher costs, a lot of higher costs in this transitional period, you could be seeing troubles for the industry overall. At the same time, I am for workers being paid what they are worth, but just got about 30 seconds here.
Yes, and I think
same thing for dealerships. Dealerships, Elon Musk doesn't.
Exactly. So there are many direct-to-consumer models that are EV that's coming out right now, which is competing after the franchise markets. But at the end of the day, we continue to actually ignore the fact that franchise markets have done a lot for internal communities, right? During COVID, they were the ones that were there that actually distributed food to their communities. They're also the ones that, raise money for the little leagues and everybody within those areas. And these family units have run these businesses for 50 years.
But some would argue straight to consumer, right? We're in a direct-to-consumer world.
Absolutely. And I just feel like at this point in time, there just needs to be different types of flexible models for all different types of consumers.
Gabby, 5 seconds. Should we look for headlines over the weekend?
Yes, I think you should.
Okay.
I think you should.
All right. So appreciate it. Bloomberg News auto reporter Gabby Coppola out there in Detroit. Diana Lee, co-founder and CEO at Constellation, here in our studio.
You're listening to the Bloomberg Businessweek podcast. Catch us live weekday afternoons from 3 to 6 Eastern. Listen on Bloomberg.com, the iHeartRadio app, and the Bloomberg Business app. Or watch us live on YouTube.
You know, Jess, it's been a little crazy in and around New York. I was trying to do something this morning, and it was like a whole block.
It's
like
just
you couldn't get into buildings.
You can't get in. There's barricades everywhere.
Right.
It's been tough.
It's been the UN General Assembly.
Yep.
It ain't over yet. But we've also had going on New York Climate Week against the backdrop of UNGA. So we've talked to a lot of voices involved in cutting carbon and improving our climate. Our next guest working to help others do exactly just that. So back with us is Eloisa Lewis. She's founder and CEO of New Climate Culture. It's a biodiversity think tank. They're basically focused on delivering climate solutions to communities and industries around the world while influencing international policy goals. So really coming at the intersection of all of this. She is on Montreal, or she's in Montreal, I should say, where we find her on Zoom. Eloisa, good to have you here with Jess and myself. Great to see you again. Hottest year on record, Mother Nature clearly showing us how things have changed, and we are definitely seeing the impact of it all. From your vantage point, though, how is the world doing when it comes to climate solutions, the adoption of those climate solutions, and then really having an impact in making our climate better?
Thank you so much for having me on and asking me this question. I can see progress, is what I can say. And when I see progress, it's great because that's exactly what we have to do. We have to point to those examples of what's working. For example, I'm seeing cities all over the world, including in Montreal, that do things like, for example, in the summer, they shut down portions of their streets so that there's pedestrian walkways, installing gardens and planting more trees all over the city. The importance of that really just can't be underestimated, because creating more pathways for pedestrians to move creatively outside of automobiles, outside of fossil fuel dependent automobiles specifically, is amazing and provides just more creativity, more movement in the city. I also see the influence of having gardens and planting more trees. That type of activity, especially female trees, having a good balance of male and female trees, is really what's going to help
Wait.
cooler
What does that mean?
temperatures around us.
I think there's people like, what do you mean?
Right.
I didn't even know. What do you mean by that?
Yes. So one of the big problems that has happened across different parts of the world, but definitely in the United States with landscape design and municipal planning, is that like a lot of people don't know enough about the biology of what they're planting. So maybe like their client asks them for, I want this kind of tree, I want this cypress tree from Greece. And they're not really choosing like the right tree for the right climate, and they're also not choosing female trees or a balance of male and female trees. So male trees are producing pollen, and female trees are producing fruit and nuts.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why that distinction is really important is because if we have a city full of male trees, which anyone can walk around and observe throughout the year how the trees behave. If they're all male, then we're going to have, all this pollen problems, allergy problems. We're going to have to go buy allergy medicine to take care of just the overcrowded airways. That's a product of this type of environmental choice that we're making with our cities.
Right.
And if we have more female trees, then we have not only, free food for the birds, the insects, squirrels, any wildlife that is coming through the city or around the city, seagulls, whatever, depending on where you are in the world. But for mushrooms are going to eat that fruit and nuts that have fallen to the ground. But so that's going to build topsoil, that's going to feed the environment, the ecosystem, maintaining biodiversity, maintaining all the community of the ecosystem that we need.
But can I jump in for a minute? Because it's got to be more than just planting green plants, right? Forgive me, but I mean, there's a lot of companies out there that are making things, doing things. I'm curious about, what are the companies that you might be working with, or, where you're seeing some significant changes there. We talked, with a guest yesterday about the agricultural environment and what's going on in California in terms of rules and policies. So making kind of the supply chain, if you basically do anything in California, you're going to have to step up and meet certain rules and regulations. And that's going to make for greener farming, which we know really can have a negative impact on the climate if not done in the right way.
Yeah, so that's something I've been talking about all year on my interviews. If anyone looks that up online, especially with in regards to the hemp and cannabis industry, we've been teaching how to do the most sustainable practices in farming policy across the whole US because my like flagship farm that I work with and that I'm partnered with is in Connecticut, and it's a USDA certified organic hemp farm. And hemp is really important because not only is it good for materials and industrial materials, and it's highly renewable, it grows faster, it's more sustainable, it sequesters carbon really quickly. It's better than using like a tree or another type of plant in 9 out of 10 cases. But it's also really good at taking heavy metals and toxins out of the soil, which makes like a toxic waste site that's had pollutants in it. It can clean that up in a couple seasons so that you could actually farm food in that soil after a disaster. But yeah, we are seeing changes, and I think that another exciting like focus that people need to hear about in terms of investment and supply chain is the idea of there's two really critical supply chains that need the world's focus, and one of them is being the Marine Conservancy through kelp reforestation, through working with invertebrates and kelp specifically. So there are farmers out there, like ones that I'm partnered with my company, who are showing and demonstrating that we can have these kelp forests grow. And okay, this is what's cool. So not only are you going to create agricultural feed with kelp, it's also human food. It's also food for the entire marine ecosystem. And further to boot, okay, yes, it's sequestering carbon, so it's cooling down our atmosphere while it's growing.
Right.
But not only that, it's going to help mitigate hurricanes, which means these kelp forests are slowing down and helping reduce the impact of
So
tidal hurricanes.
right. No. I totally get all of this. So I guess and we've only got about a minute left here, is, Eloisa, like, what is it that companies that you are seeing or working with that are doing things, whether it's in fashion, whether it's in architecture, doing stuff that really helps move the needle? Like, I don't disagree. And I think most of those folks who are listening or watching right now don't disagree with all the good stuff you're talking about. But who's actually moving the needle when it comes to reducing the carbon footprint? And just got about 30 seconds left.
I think that I'm moving the needle, and my partners are in this business are moving the needle. So that would be, New Climate Culture, that would be the Climate Foundation, that would be Sound Ocean Science, who's regrowing coral reefs, farming coral reefs, and anyone who's affiliated with us, CBG Gurus, is another company. There's just a lot, and I'm taking on hotel clients right now specifically. So that's going to be the focus of the next quarter for me, is a couple hotel clients in two coastal regions in the US. And so what I can say is that the people who move the needle are the people who have the most ability to range over all of the complexity, because there's a lot of moving parts, and if you're not able to come in and manage all the different intersections of where there's transportation, there's waste production,
Eloisa, we have to run
operation,
because if I don't go, the computer's going to go. Be well, take care. Eloisa Lewis, she is of New Climate Culture.
You're listening to the Bloomberg Businessweek podcast. Catch us live weekday afternoons from 3 to 6 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and YouTube. You can also listen live on Amazon Alexa from our flagship New York station. Just say, Alexa, play Bloomberg 1130.
All right, everybody. Maybe it's the money. Must be the money. Maybe it's just seeing what else Deion Sanders can do. That is him rapping. Who knew? Of course, he's better known for being the only man to play in both the Super Bowl and the World Series, and for being so shy. I kid. And now Coach Prime is writing the new playbook of college football. I love every time he's in front of a camera, I got to say. This is a feature story in the new issue of Bloomberg Businessweek. It's now on newsstands, online at Bloomberg.com/Businessweek. And on the Bloomberg, we're going to play a little bit more of Deion Sanders, I promise, on the way out. With us is Randall Williams, Bloomberg News U.S. sports business reporter, along with the editor of Bloomberg Businessweek, Joel Weber, both here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker studio. What can't Deion do, Joel?
There's probably something, but in college football, I don't know if we've discovered that yet. But, big test this weekend. So what ultimately we wanted to talk about here, and Randall, who is the lead violin on this, along with Ira Boudway, really did a marvelous job nailing this one. What ultimately we're talking about here is a new coach at the University of Colorado. If you haven't been paying attention to college football,
live under a rock.
I don't know where you've been, because this has been must-see TV. No one in college football has, as we write in the deck, harnessed the power of social media, the NCAA transfer portal, and his own celebrity. They took Colorado, and obviously we're only a couple games into the season. This school has gone from being a perennial loser to must-see TV. There are so many billions of dollars at stake that college football is able to influence. The economics of college football are amazing. And along comes Deion, who transfers into Colorado and has put Colorado on the map. And it really encapsulates how all of these changes in college football, no one has been able to leverage it quite like Deion and make it look as this much fun.
That's pretty.
So Randall went to Colorado and got to watch a game. What struck you about what he's building?
So there's a show called Coach Prime coming out, and there's obviously you get to
No.
see all the glitz and glamour, but none of it is for show when you're around him. It is all truly authentic to who he is. There is no, turn it on, turn it off. Coach Prime is Coach Prime. The quotes are not fake. He does not write it down. There is no paper. Everything that he says on the spot is truly off the top of his head.
Is he just the right guy at the right place? And I'm thinking about Nil, and I'm thinking about just some of the changes that have happened with college athletes, that he is just someone who gets it and just came in at the right time and has just exploded.
It's both. He is someone who can relate to college athletes.
Did I say Nil? I always call it Nil. I know. It's name, image, likeness.
It's
Sorry.
all good. It's all good.
Thank
But,
you. You're just kind.
He's someone who gets the college life better than anybody. He was a professional athlete. He was a college athlete, and he understands marketability probably better than any athlete ever, because he was one of the most marketable athletes in the 90s.
Yeah.
And so when you take that and you say, hey, I can teach you not only how to play well, I can get you drafted, and I can get you exposed more so than maybe any college in the world as far as athletics go. Because you think about it, it isn't just the media where they're playing at 10 a.m. or 12 a.m. or even a late night game. It is his social media handle. It is the Prime Video documentary. And it's his son's social media handles. All three of his son's social media handles.
Also worth mentioning that his son is the quarterback of the team in the Heisman conversation already.
Yeah.
So there's a lot going on here.
For sure.
I got to confess, I'm a Duck, University of Oregon. That is who Colorado plays this weekend. So this is, what I do appreciate about this is that he is off to an incredible start, but the season's going to test him now, right? Right. Randall?
So that's the thing. Everybody when he stepped in, Colorado was 1-11 last year, and now they're 3-0. So he has 3 times as many wins. You could consider that a victory, but he doesn't. Now, the first 3 games, TCU, I believe, lost the majority of their starters. Some graduated, some went to the draft. Nebraska's had a good defense, but their quarterback has been a turnover machine. And then the Colorado State game, it was great theatrics, but they should have blown them out.
Yeah.
Now Oregon is coming, or they're going to Oregon. Colorado is. And it's one of these things where this is a football talent over the last decade that has been dominant. And so can Colorado go in there and win? Because let me tell you right now, if Colorado goes to Oregon and wins, the game where USC comes to Colorado, Boulder, it might be higher rated than the national championship.
Yeah, I agree. And it will speak to where college football's going. Right. Where when suddenly we have a Big 12 that has both those teams in it, we have a completely different dynamic, which is why these multi-billion-dollar TV deals have become the new language of college football.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. If you lose, does Fox say, we're not coming to the next game?
No, absolutely not. He's too electric. I mean, okay. So I tried to work this in the story, and it just didn't make the cut. But I tried to add all of the coaches.
The editors actually took something out of this incredible story. I bet every nugget was so good.
I'll talk to my people.
I want the raw copy.
No. I didn't write this sentence because it wasn't worth it. So I added every single Pac-12's coaches' Instagram followers together and tried to see just how much it would be in comparison to Deion. It's not even remotely close. Yeah. I mean, I think it was
That's
10
just
times as many. And so it's one of these things where yes, the hype train will slow down. The broadcast may not come out as much, but it's Deion Sanders. He and his sons and the program are electric. If they're let's say 4-4 in 8 weeks, which I don't think they will be, but if they are, people are going to still be talking about the gimmicks and the things that they do to make the program fun.
The element that is also just kind of worth mentioning there is one of the reasons that he's able to do all this is because of the transfer portal.
Yeah.
So the team that he inherited and the team that he has right
Is that
now
what takes me up to space?
completely different rosters. And that could have never happened really until the past couple of years.
Yeah.
So he's been able to like use that profile that he has, but then also the changes to the NCAA have enabled it. And if it happens in college football, it could happen in college basketball. Like we could see this.
It is
again
very
and
controversial.
I was just going to say it's controversial.
It's very
right?
controversial because you're essentially walking into a room full of athletes who were there before you got there and saying, well, you guys better get on board or get out of the way.
This is what he did in his first meeting, right,
Correct.
with the team in Colorado.
Correct. But with that, you know, it's one of these things where if he doesn't do that and he inherits these players who maybe didn't win as many games as they should have or didn't compete to the level that he wants, then what? Then people are going to be saying, oh, look, Deion, he could do it at Jackson State. He couldn't do it at Colorado. So it's two-sided coin, but he's winning right now.
You know, the other thing he's doing is selling sunglasses. And we did this little sidebar coming to this.
Merch?
The merch is also just worth talking about because so there was some shade thrown at Deion for not taking his sunglasses and his hat off in a press conference. He turned that into motivation, and he endorses these sunglasses, right? How much product did they sell?
They sold $1.2 million for $67 sunglasses in a day. And when I talked to the Blenders Eyewear, the CEO, he said that at one point in time when Deion was on set, they were selling a pair a second.
Oh, my God.
Insane.
I have to say, and people go read it, go online, buy the magazine, just check it out, because the economic impact of what's happening in the town in terms of hotel rooms and just the tickets and so on and so forth is unbelievable.
$17 million in just 1 week. Imagine what's going to happen if, let's say, LeBron says, I'm going to Colorado for the USC game. If he just says that, imagine what it's going to be. By the end of the season, it could be very well over $120 million.
Prime time.
It's unbelievable, right?
It's truly like why you make a hire like this.
Yeah.
But then everything else that has transpired is obviously going their way. And it's amazing to see like this football program that really has not been significant for decades suddenly on the map and being led by somebody who's truly electric.
All right. Watch some football, but definitely read this story. No doubt about it. It's a feature story. Randall Williams, Bloomberg News, U.S. sports business reporter.
And Ira Boudouet.
And Ira Boudouet, and the editor of Businessweek, Joel Weber here. Great story.
I'm driving in my car. I turn on the radio.
How about you let me drive?
Oh, no.
Who's gonna drive you home?
Honey, please, I'll do the driving.
Drive on.
Excuse me, I want to drive.
It's the question that drives us.
This is the Drive to the Close
That funky music will drive us till the dawn.
on Bloomberg Radio.
All right, everybody, just under 18 minutes left in today's trading session, getting ready to wrap up the Friday trade and the weekly trade. And you got stocks bouncing around here. We saw some buying just about an hour ago or about half an hour ago, and now we're seeing kind of a little bit of a turnaround. But it does feel like, Jess, a little bit of a breather today.
It does, especially after the last few trading sessions that have been pretty volatile, Carol.
Right? It's like significant. All right, so let's see what Sylvia Jablonski has to say. She's CEO and Chief Investment Officer over at Defiance ETFs. She's with us on the phone in New York City. Sylvia, nice to have you back here on another crazy week. Here we are in 2023. Let's start macro. How are you thinking about all that happened today, and what kind of flows are you seeing in terms of investor reaction into Defiance ETFs, into or out of, for that matter?
Hi, Carol. Great to be here with you today. Well, it's certainly been an interesting set of days here around the Fed announcement. So, if we just look at the macro picture here, I think prior to the Fed meeting coming up, we had some decent inflation reads. One was a little bit higher than we liked, but overall there was uncertainty, but a little bit of stability. And, corporate earnings were holding up well. The consumer was spending. We kind of thought that this was going to be at least clear skies into the end of the year with potentially a bullish market. And then, post-Fed yesterday, we now go back to a little bit of uncertainty around the prospect of whether or not there's a change now in the soft landing scenario. So we know the Fed was a little hawkish. He removed about 50 bips of easing in the dot plot, went from 4 to 2 cuts, and the market didn't like it, right? So I think over the last couple of days, what we saw was a little bit of panic selling, and that's often what happens, unfortunately, on pullbacks. I often think about that and sort of wish we would see it the other way, right? Because for sort of dollar cost averaging long-term holders, these are actually the best buying opportunities. But investors get a little bit spooked. So
when you say a little bit, is it really just a little bit, or is it something enough
really
that you guys are
a little bit?
Okay.
Yeah.
Any buying?
Just a little bit. We did. So we saw a lot of buying on the income side. So we've got 2 products that are, meant to generate enhanced income essentially. And we saw really outsized buying actually in those 2 funds. And then we saw a little bit of selling in kind of the tech type of names in the AI play. And that's recovering today, which is of note. But yeah, that's kind of where we saw the flow and the action.
When you speak income, equity income, or are you talking about fixed income income?
Yeah, so I'll give you 2 examples. There are 2 tickers. One is JEPY, JEPY, and one is QQQY. And what they do is essentially look to sell in the money puts on a daily basis. So they're 0 data expiry puts that are in the money that expire within 24 hours. And the idea is that you generate the premium on the daily basis to hopefully, provide enhanced income to clients by the end of the year. So they're products that track an equity index, the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ, but the goal is really to sell puts and to gather the premium to pay that out to investors. And so we've just seen incredible demand and interest in these products, and they've actually only been out for a couple of days too. So income is the name of the game this year.
I'm glad you brought up puts, because when you're looking at that lack of hedging that's been there the past few months, especially because of just how cheap it is now as well, what do you think that really tells us? And when you're talking about puts being shorter for this type of duration, does it mask some of the potential hedging that is going on underneath the surface?
Yeah, so that's a really interesting question. If you look over the last couple of weeks, actually, there's been an increase in volume in, kind of hedges going on the books. So I think a lot of investors, and then obviously the kind of the professional hedge fund guys and whatnot, were probably doing a lot of that ahead of the Fed meeting. But when you sell slightly in the money puts, it's actually a bullish expression, right? So our view isn't so much on the direction of the market, but our view is that there's this volatility aspect to puts that expire within 1 day that can be captured to generate enhanced income essentially. So it doesn't really have a whole lot to do with hedging in the way that we're doing it, but to the hedging question, I do think that you see increased volume. And I've been actually studying this a bunch just because we've kind of come out with this ETF, but SIBO's come out with some information that actually shows that there have been, kind of trillions of AUM in options buying and selling in recent days. It's been outsized, but it's been pretty level. So the buys have matched the sells, which is super interesting.
So this whole idea of like in 24 hours, is it a case of like, so you kind of always have your money available kind of thinking, or what is it?
No, it's actually that, you get more bites at the apple, right? So,
okay.
So some of the better known strategies out there are the covered call strategies, right? Where they're holding, let's say, the S&P 500, and then they're employing a covered call strategy to generate income. So we kind of just flipped that on its head and said, well, treasuries are returning 5%. So instead of holding the S&P, why don't we hold, treasuries and have 5% higher income environment, and then sell in the money puts on the actual index and generate the yield that way. So it's really a way to, outperform some of these great covered call strategies that are out there and are also providing amazing kind of income distributions. But, our goal is to kind of beat that.
Should we talk some names?
We should. What are some individual names that you are advising clients to buy?
Yeah, so I think given what's gone on in the last couple of days, there's been so much FOMO this year about, not having gone into the AI stocks and the tech stocks and things like that. And then when you see, kind of days like this and Thursday and Friday, it's as we spoke about before, right? Everybody's sort of like panic selling, but really there should be kind of panic buying, right? Or excitement buying there. I think when you get pullbacks, you think about the future of AI and what that means. It's going to actually, it's not just a buzzword, right? It's something that's going to change healthcare. It's something that's going to allow for autonomous driving, for electric vehicles to work, for smart cities to be connected, for banks to properly manage their risk, and for all of these, kind of different things that we're talking about as they relate to AI and, kind of what powers AI.
So you don't think it's getting old and crusty yet, the AI trade? You think
I don't think it's even started. I
Okay.
think this is the decade of I think AI is the next tech, like AI, supercomputing, quantum computing is the next 5 to 10 years. That it's going to be the next 5 to 10 years.
Do you also like Tesla
and the revenues will start coming from it.
Oh, I'm sorry, I jumped in. Do you also like Tesla and Rivian? We've got about 30 seconds left.
Yeah, love Tesla and Rivian. Also both knocked off of their pedestals this week, amazing performance into the year. But what you're seeing there is this great interest in climate change, going carbon neutral. You see the growth, the CAGR has gone from, 5% of cars sold globally to about 18% of cars sold globally. More than 60% of vehicles sold in China are EV. It's picking up in the US, more battery stations, government funding, and tax credits. So it's the, if AI is the future of tech, this is the future of auto.
I find it really interesting, Jess, because I feel like we get to a point where everybody's like, okay, the growth names, stay away from them, stay like this. But she's Sylvia reminding us that this is the future.
And we always have this type of argument with tech and growth, and yet they still continue to power things out.
They come back. Sylvia, really smart, thank you, and really thoughtful. Sylvia Jablonski, CEO and CIO at Defiance ETFs, on the phone in New York City.
This is the Bloomberg Businessweek podcast, available on Apple, Spotify, and anywhere else you get your podcasts. Listen live weekday afternoons from 3 to 6 Eastern on Bloomberg.com, the iHeartRadio app, TuneIn, and the Bloomberg Business app. You can also watch us live every weekday on YouTube and always on the Bloomberg Terminal.